Let's bring in Hollywood divorce attorney David Glass for more on this. David?
People going through divorces are going through some of the hardest times of their lives, and a lot of what they're going through is emotional. And in any divorce, there's a huge sense of loss, and loss of relationship, of money, some friends.
David Glass here for another new episode of the Hourglass Podcast, where family law and psychology intersect. I'm a certified family law specialist, former psychologist, and the author of Moving On, Redesigning Your Emotional, Financial, and Social Life After Divorce. We're going to begin our discussion today with a highly skilled therapist, Claudia Sinay-Mosias from the San Francisco Bay Area. She has been a practicing psychologist since 1990. She was co-director of Park Presidio Counseling Center in San Francisco for 25 years, where she supervised interns, led trainings, and saw couples, groups, and individuals. She also served as a licensing examiner for the California Board of Behavioral Sciences. She has specialized in narcissism and its effects since the late 1990s. I can't wait for her to tell us what she knows. Welcome, Claudia. Thanks so much for being with us today. Can you start off by just defining narcissism for us?
So narcissism exists on a continuum, and I think that it's important to know that we go from healthy narcissism, which all of us need to be good at our profession, to have confidence in how to raise our children, to function in the world. And then we go to what is called narcissistic traits, where somebody might be a little selfish or monopolizing the conversation too much, or speaking without a breath and never asking about you. All of those things are within the normal range. I think what we're talking about today is narcissistic personality disorder, and that's the most troubling on the spectrum. And narcissistic personality disorder goes all the way to sociopathic narcissism, where people commit crimes, murders, robberies, and have no remorse about it. They just don't feel anything. So the personality disorder, which we're talking about today, is characterized by a complete lack of empathy. The other characteristic is an overwhelming need for admiration. And we see this in somebody being extremely self-involved. They have to always be right. And they're willing to gaslight us, which is to make us think that we're wrong when we're not, in order to maintain that illusion that they're constantly right. The other thing that we look at in narcissism is grandiosity. Somebody that might look like, look at me, I'm so attractive, I'm so smart. It might be that I am the best. It might be that they don't settle for people around them being anything but the best. The narcissist's personality sees themselves as exceptional, and they don't want to associate with anybody else who doesn't meet their criteria for exceptionality. So what this means is you either feel really unexceptional around them, you feel less than, you feel not good enough, or they don't have a lot of people around them. Right. It's important to note that narcissists can have what's called an empathy mask, and that is that they can turn on empathy for the benefit of the outside world. So example, if you're married to a narcissist, and I'm going to use the word he because 60 to 75% of narcissists are male, that doesn't mean there aren't females, but they're predominantly male, will be charming and entertaining, and then they'll come home and criticize their family relentlessly. So what happens there is that the family gets no sympathy from the outside world. Gee, your dad is great. Oh, your husband, I wish I had one of those. But they don't know what's happening inside the family unit. And that's the empathy mask that they wear. And they can take that mask pretty much on and off at will. Which brings me to another point about the narcissist personality, and that is that they are interpersonally exploitive. And that's how they do this. They can use people, they can abuse people, and then present another face to the world, which doesn't look like exploitation at all. It looks like they're charming, they're intelligent, they're engaging. But the exploitiveness has to do with making themselves feel, what do I want to say here, real. to understand the narcissist in the deepest sense is to understand that they don't have a sense of self, which is ironic because they're so big and full of themselves. But that is a projection and a false front. So they try very hard to get people to buy into their mask, to buy into their illusion, because they're terrified that they're going to be discovered, that there's nobody home there.
Right.
So the underlying problem with them is it's very sad. But I have to say, one of the characteristics of a narcissistic personality is they're not bothered by it. You know,
Right.
it's not like somebody who has anxiety or depression who may come to a counselor and say, gee, help me, I'm having panic attacks, or I just don't feel like getting out of bed. The narcissist is not bothered by their condition. Everybody else is bothered by their condition.
Right. I remember learning in graduate school the difference between Axis 1 disorders,
Yes.
depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, and Axis 2 disorders, or personality disorders, including narcissistic personality disorder, is that in the first, I'm using layman terms, in the first category, people feel they're crazy. In the second category, they drive everyone around them crazy.
That's exactly right.
Maybe that's oversimplifying it.
Yes, but it's true, yes.
And so, is it possible for people to be diagnosed on more than one Axis 2 disorder, with more than one personality disorder?
Yeah, it's quite possible, and it's often frequent, especially when you're looking at what's called borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. They're kind of bed partners, and often they appear in the same person. And if they do appear in the same person, you're in big trouble.
Right.
if you're married to them or working for them or somehow associated with them. Because the borderline personality disorder is very combative. Narcissists aren't necessarily combative, at least in a way that is easily ascertainable. They're good at making us feel crazy because they present their arguments in a very logical way and sometimes very calming and very, very reasonable. And so we think, am I nuts? But the borderline, like I said, is more combative, and their personality structure is a bit more unstable. So what you find with somebody who has both personality disorders is somebody that's really, really impossible to deal with.
Right.
They don't get away with the success in the outer world as much because their pathology is so obvious.
Right.
But it's very, very difficult. I have some clients now who are dealing with spouses who are both borderline and narcissistic. And so you get the gaslighting, the ghosting, the making you feel crazy, and you get the fights, you get the anger, you get the argument.
Right. It's almost the perfect storm
Yes.
of all the worst things
Yes.
that a partner can be.
Yes.
Taking a step back, you mentioned that at the heart of the narcissist is that they, to use my words, they feel about this big inside. Mm-hmm. And so how does that lead them into this style of interacting with people?
That's a very interesting and complex question. So when you feel like you don't really exist, that you have no validity, you develop a defense system that's made up of this false persona. And that's to keep you from feeling empty.
Right.
And it works. So that, that's where it comes from. The narcissistic, there's some interesting things about where narcissism comes from. For decades, clinicians have been treating narcissists as victims of child abuse or trauma in childhood or adulthood or adolescence. And that's not wrong. But what we found, there's some recent studies that have now been published about over 70 years of studies over multiple cultures and multiple countries and multiple institutions studying these things, that says that there's no correlation directly between child abuse or trauma and narcissistic personality. Again, that doesn't mean that they haven't been traumatized, but it's how the individual deals with the trauma that distinguishes. Most of us are resilient. We can introspect. We can figure it out. We can problem solve, and we can ask for help. And therefore we can resolve our childhood traumas. But the narcissist instead builds this false persona behind which he hides. And as long as the persona is this grandiosity, you're not going to say, help me, I feel empty. You're not going to feel that emptiness.
Right. So why is it that people are so often attracted to narcissists? And why do they get caught up in these relationships until they find themselves knee-deep in it and have trouble getting out?
Yeah. A lot of narcissists were raised by narcissists. And kind of two things, this is going off, and maybe we'll talk about this later, that there's two paths that happen most often when you were raised by a narcissist. You either become a codependent counter-narcissist or you become a narcissist yourself. So if you become a counter-narcissist, you were raised by a narcissist and you never got that love that you needed, you think, it's something I did. If I could only have been a better child, if I could only have been a better student, if I could only have been a better wife, then this wouldn't have happened. So you do what we call the compulsion to repeat. You go out and you find somebody that's similar to dad or to mom, and you think, if I'm just good enough for them, I can change them. Now, this is not conscious. Nobody goes out and says, I'm going to find my abusive, neglective parent. But we're attracted to that. And so I think that's how that happens.
Right. And so how does the victim, to use that term loosely, play into the narcissist game when they're in a relationship? Do they have any role in the game, or is this just something being put on them?
No, they have a role in the game. They do the dance. And the dance is, it's my fault. The narcissist is saying, it's your fault. And the counter-narcissist is saying, you're right, it is. The narcissist is saying, black is white, and the counter-narcissist is saying, maybe that's true. So you become very codependent to the narcissist's behavior because you want their love, you want their approval. And the narcissist is betting that you want their approval more than you want your own sense of self. And so the game perpetuates itself.
And so what kinds of things does a narcissist say? What are some of their taglines that are going to jump out at you? As a divorce lawyer, I've interviewed people to be potential clients, and I've had people tell me, I could do this case myself, and I understand exactly what the judge needs to hear, but I'm going to let you represent me. And that's when I try to get off the phone with them. I just don't want to deal with that person as a divorce client. But what are some other taglines that you're going to hear to maybe tip you off I'm dealing with someone who's narcissistic or going full-blown into access to diagnosis?
Well, so I don't get a lot of people calling me who are narcissists and say, help me, I'm a narcissist, for reasons that I've mentioned before. When I have seen narcissists, it's almost exclusively as part of a couple. The couple will come in because they're having trouble in their marriage. And what the giveaway is for me that somebody might be a narcissist is they come in with, this has nothing to do with me. You need to fix her. She obviously is not understanding me. And I'm so glad we're here so that you can make her right.
Right. And then at some point, if they're coming into you in couples therapy and you've got a narcissist, at some point do they bail out because you're starting to focus the attention on them? Absolutely.
Couples therapy with narcissists doesn't usually last long, and in my experience, what's happened, you go 3-4 sessions, and then the narcissist says, you're not a good therapist, you're obviously siding with her, we're stopping, this is not helping. Then, if I'm lucky, in terms of getting to do my work, the remaining partner will come in for individual work.
And then you can start working with them.
Yes.
To try and get past this narcissist, I suppose.
When we talk about celebrities who tend to be narcissistic, full of themselves, my take on that is not, they're not sociopaths, for sure. They're probably quite insecure, as all narcissists are, and they have built a false front that prevents them from feeling so insecure. And that's sad, but it's not damaging society. You know, we don't really care if somebody who is on the red carpet and just thinks she's all that. I mean, so what? It's kind of entertaining. But that's very different from sociopathic narcissism.
Great. Thanks so much for all the insight you shared with us today and for spending time with us. Now, I understand that you do psychotherapy sessions online. Can you let us know how people can find you?
Yes, my practice is fairly limited. Currently, I'm doing a lot of talking, speaking like this, and writing. But if you want to contact me, I'm at Claudia Sinay-Mosias, MFT.com.
Great. All right. Thanks again.